In February, I got a midday phone call with that terrible, "How can I support you?" voice from my husband. I hate that voice. The news put me on the floor. On the lab floor with several people nearby doing sleepy lab things, filling tubes with liquids, picking things up and putting them back down. I felt in the middle of a Hollywood set, an actor watching but not knowing my lines. I let Fiona play in my head, a movie that runs backwards and starts 23 years ago. It features me as the protagonist. Fiona talking me through a relationship crisis while pacing outside her tent on a hiking trip. Fiona and her fiance spending days painting my house after flying across the country to see me. Fiona rappelling down in her pink long underwear to join me in the cold black water of the canyon. Fiona and I foolishly, brazenly competing for who can climb higher in the sweep of a tree canopy. How selfish grief makes us. I can only imagine Fiona as she relates to me, like I was the center of her world, and that's not accurate at all. Fiona was the glue that held all of us together, the kind of person who makes us all feel like the main character in her life. A week later, end of February, I fly to Washington, D.C. No one is wearing masks yet. We're following the news closely, but the deaths and the numbers seem merely international, distant, and abstract. Some 200 of her closest friends gather at the house. We introduce ourselves, hug, cry, and marvel as the place fills. Unprompted, we start sharing stories. A colleague shares an image that stays with me. Fiona, working in DC and walking between the important marble buildings that so far from the wild spaces that gave her life, she would dip her hand into the flower beds and touch each leaf along her way. I share a memory from Fiona's visit during my month-long stay in the hospital after I got a spinal cord injury. It was Thanksgiving, a holiday I usually spent in the desert, rock climbing, camping, and cooking a pit turkey in the freezing dark. I was so sick of hospitals, hospital food, and my own limitations. My friends were in the desert. Fiona knew friends of friends who were having a big Thanksgiving dinner nearby. I wanted to go, to escape, to maybe feel a bit more normal. There was one issue, though. My spinal cord was still in spinal shock, and I wasn't able to pee on my own. A collection of nurses cathed me on a regular schedule. I couldn't do it myself due to my other injuries and a cast on my arm. The hospital required that I had a way of cathing if I were to leave for more than 2 hours. So Fiona, an EMT in college, volunteered to do it. She observed the nurses, then had them teach her. She passed their test for sterile technique, and we were released into the wilds of the Bay Area suburbs. She made it seem like the most normal thing in the world. A real friend helps you pee through a little straw if you can't do it yourself. My story is one of many. We all have the same story to share. We are the stray cat Fiona fed, brought inside, introduced to the other rescues. The day feels like a lifetime of knowing Fiona, compressed. Introduction, connection made. I find a piece of paper and start filling it with names, email addresses, my phone with numbers. Through the brick of grief in my stomach bubbles up joy. Fiona was an expert collector of people. I fall in love with all 200 of them in that kitchen. I start thinking about a future where the spokes don't need the hub. We had just met in the middle. We could move forward from here. I sleep there, and their bodies, the sound of their breathing, the entire feel of the house sends me waves of relief. I fall asleep to imagined scenarios. A yearly brunch, a gathering in LA, another trip to DC. In the morning, a perfect stranger drives me 4 hours to visit Fiona's parents in New Jersey. Fiona and I met in middle school. Her parents' house is a few minutes from my own. I always loved going there. Her mom must have made me tea a million times growing up. This time, I noticed the gravel driveway, which is a bit of a hassle on wheels, and the steps at the front door in the garage. Her brothers helped me inside. I wonder what it feels like for her family to see me in a wheelchair after watching me grow up and after losing Fiona. I remember an irrational bargaining thought I had when I just heard the news. If only Fiona had gotten a spinal cord injury from her fall, like me. We got through college together. We could be disabled together. I would help her adjust to a new life. She was the one who taught me how to rock climb. Cup of tea in hand, I sit with her mother. Lavinia is a force. The strength of her fury takes me by surprise. Fiona and I had many things in common, including our struggle to understand and be understood by our moms. She asks, "Why did Fiona keep climbing after what happened to you? Was Fiona's boyfriend in college abusive? Was she raped? Was she depressed?" The conversation meanders through every sad recollection of her daughter. Lavinia is taking the grief and wrapping it tighter and tighter around herself. I just sit. I listen. I make a series of empathetic movements with my face muscles. I can tell right away she's not ready for me to talk. She worries it was suicide, then swings and blames Fiona's friends, the group she was with, for the accident. How dare they take advantage of her kindness by having her lead this trip? She was the only one who knew what she was doing. They were using her. She risked her life for nothing. I've been in this role before, trying to explain our choices, foolish and deadly in hindsight, to family and to friends. And though I've used all the skills I have to find the right words in the moment, it has never felt enough. The truth is, there's nothing I can say that will help. I also don't think we can learn much from death. And if we try too hard to be scholarly, to be clever, to extract meaning, I think we lose the bigger picture. Fiona was doing something she had the skills, the experience, and the passion to do. That's enough for me. She is justified in her choices. I trusted her with my life many times. This accident didn't change how I see her, how competent she was, or how right she was. The world is an unpredictable, chaotic place. We are separated by a paper-thin veil from being my Fiona, or being me. Fear and discomfort around death and disability pull us to create illusions of control, mental log sheets of risk. And though I don't think the usual calculations are useless, I do think they work more to create a feeling of comfort than a predictable result. Yes, we can mitigate risk, but I don't see a significant difference between what happened to Fiona and what happened to a friend who was hit by a car while commuting on her bicycle, or a man I met in the hospital who got a cervical spinal cord injury when he slipped walking from his pool to the back door. When I was in the hospital, doctors constantly asked me what happened. When I said rock climbing accident, they made sad clucking noises and knowingly nodded. In our conversations, they would bring up the movie Free Solo. Yes, I've seen it. No, I was not doing that. No, I don't know Alex Honnold. But my many car accident-created companions were treated as victims and unfortunate souls. There are risks accepted and normalized by society and risks that are not. And the distinction is pretty arbitrary in my mind. What I believe in is the freedom to be wrong, to be unlucky, to be hurt. Cancer, car accident, or rock climbing fall, my reaction is the same. Fiona died for everything she wanted to live for, and I don't judge her for the grief she caused her family and her friends by her choices. I think all of us deserve love, even if we go out into the mountains and don't come back, or just barely come back. Sitting with her mom is a stark reminder of what my own family must have gone through after my accident. Though forgiving Fiona is much easier, I sit with Lavinia and again, forgive myself for the pain I know I caused my mom. I've tried all the flavors of grief since falling 60 feet. I know the ones Lavinia is reaching for first. She's working hard to reject the people who were Fiona's strength, the community she had the strength to build, and the community that showed me, again, how to feel the first breaths of relief. I've retreated into anger, shame, but all these forms of self-flagellation have limited mileage. The people I admire most are the ones who didn't yield in the face of loss and grief. A friend who got a high-level spinal cord injury paragliding and then went back to paragliding. Fiona for visiting me after a rock climbing accident and then going on a rock climbing trip. The widower I met right out of the hospital who doesn't regret the last deadly mountain bike ride with his wife. The people who loved us and continue to love us. We may seem foolish and fanatical for making those choices, but unless you're inside my head, you don't know what it feels like to step back, to make a different choice. Lavinia isn't ready to hear this. She probably still isn't. I hug her and reassure her. Fiona was so happy. She had just gotten engaged. Seeing her and her fiancé together was pure joy. We turned to a safe, familiar topic for the both of us. Books she's reading, books I'm reading, new titles recommended that will help her process what happened. When Fiona's dad walks into the room, I take one look into his face, and we both burst into tears. The rest of the visit is a blur. When I fly home in March, the world shuts down. My visions of new friends, group trips, a life where I'm better at texting back, initiating hangouts, and asking strangers for their number, glitch and blink out. Time stands still as we sit inside our apartment walls and try new hobbies alone. It gives me whiplash. Fiona's loss looms over this strange landscape like a statue pointing the way. The first loss in a phalanx of losses, showing the way through our collective grief by teaching us the cure. Mutual aid, community, kindness, an open heart that reserves judgment, and a house filled with 200 people that can grieve together, cry together, and reach for joy.
Alina Garbuzov, ladies and gentlemen. Alina!